Hey guys, Max here. 5 years in, 30 roommates, and $80,000 in rent collected. I'm going to go over my 5 secrets that are going to help you become a room rental rich landlord. So without further ado, let's dive in. The question is your house an asset or a liability? What do you think? Literally 20% of all the dollars ever printed were printed since 2019. Experience. Reading books is great, but learning from your experience is how you do it. All right, secret number 1 is be specific in everything. I'm talking about the advertisement you put on Craigslist or Facebook. I'm talking about in your speaking with people. I'm talking about in literally everything. There's every single thing you should be talking about should be something very specific. Meaning, instead of saying I want a honest roommate who pays rent on time, that's pretty vague. You want to talk about every single quality you have in roommates. I want an honest, direct communicator roommate who pays rent on time and has the same sleep schedule as me. That's a lot more specific because guess what? You can have someone honest who has a complete opposite sleep schedule as you. And if you are throwing off your sleep schedule or they're throwing off their sleep schedule, that makes living really not fun at all. So in the room advertisement, when you talk to them, when you do anything regards to room rentals, be specific in what you want, what you expect it, and always keep that standard. All right, number 2 is have agreements in place. And I'm not talking about verbal agreements, I'm talking about written agreements. You want to make sure you have a lease agreement or rental agreement that stipulates when rent is due, keys being returned upon that, the security deposit, first month's rent, everything in between, the lease term, whether it's month to month, 6 months, 1 year, whatever you do, you want to make sure you have that agreement in place. I don't care if it's your best bud from childhood. You want to make sure your agreement's in place because once you sign something, things are real. Once people talk about it, it's in the ether somewhere of us talking about it, but it's not real. Once you have a contract, you sign it with ink, you put your name there, that makes it real. And when people have contracts in place, each party is far more likely to follow through on their end of the deal. So you definitely want to make sure you have the rental agreement as well as a roommate agreement. A roommate agreement is like the house rules. How specifically this house operates compared to every single other one in the neighborhood. Like me, for instance, in my roommate rules, house rules, I have no overnight guests. You want to know why? Because years before, I had a roommate who had an overnight desk, a new one, about 3 times a week. There was very, very long blonde hair in the drain. Guess what? Definitely not for me and definitely not for him. He was bald. So having those inconveniences really do wear on you after a while. And when it's a new person or the same person messing up the bathroom schedule, you just want to make sure that the rules that you pick are tailored for your situation. Like for me, no overnight guests. For you, it might be no pets. It might be no smoking on the premises. There might be certain things that you want for your house specifically. Those house rules, if you go back to step 1, be specific. Be specific on those house rules because the more specific you are, the more likely people are going to abide by those rules. And if you want the lease agreement or the house rules that I've been using for years, and it's really been part of the reason I've been able to keep and retain the really, really perfect, ideal roommates, you can go to the link in the description, maxmymoney.org/rentyourroom, and I will email it over to you right now. All right, number 3 is be honest and direct. It might not be a secret, but it's definitely a hot commodity nowadays. Not many people are forthcoming with what they want. They're very clandestine and very secretive. Now this video is about secrets, but the secret here is to be honest and direct. Similar to everything, we're building upon everything. Be specific, have the agreements, and be honest in those situations. If you want someone to be honest to you, how can you not be honest to them? That's called being a hypocrite, being a complete two-faced person. You want someone who's honest and direct. If there are issues, be direct about them. The best thing is when someone first moves in, like the first week or so, and they're doing things that you don't like, be direct in that first week. Because once that habit starts to set in place, it's very difficult to change. But in the beginning, like in a new situation, there are no habits in place. The bathroom, the kitchen, whatever it may be, they leave the kitchen a mess. Make sure to be direct and say, hey, would you mind cleaning up the kitchen? When they first do it, don't wait. Do not wait. Do not put things under the rug. Be direct as soon as possible. Now, that doesn't mean be a jerk about it, though. There's a way to communicate, and there's a way to communicate well. You want to communicate well and not be a complete jerk about it. Secret 4 is have high, yes, very high standards. I want very, very few people to call me when I put a room ad up. I want, 5 or 6, maybe. When I first started doing room rentals, my standards were so low and I was so vague and I wasn't specific. I would have 20 to 25 calls the first day. And guess how many people of those were qualified? Literally zero. Not a single one was a qualified person. They didn't have the money. They didn't have a job. They didn't have this. They didn't have that. It was all people who would have disqualified themselves if I was specific and had high standards. What I've realized is as I raise my standards incrementally, and now I have pretty high standards. You have to hit a pretty high standard to even for me even to consider you as a roommate. That's not because I want to throw people on the street. It's just, and when you're in my house, guess what? Whose rules they are? My rules. My house, my rules. Isn't that how it works? The higher I've raised my standards, the better and more ideal roommate I've been able to find. The money's right. The job is right. They're direct communicators. They're honest. They have the same relative sleep schedule as me. If you put those 5 things in a brew and put it together, what comes out is an ideal roommate. And that's what we're aiming for here, the ideal roommate. The only way you're going to find someone similar to you, who I would consider myself an ideal roommate, is by being very specific, by being honest, direct, and keeping those high standards no matter the situation. I just did a video a couple days ago about how I had to evict a guy because I lowered my standards. The only times I've had to evict people, which has been twice, is guess what? I've lowered my standards. Keep your standards high, and I promise you your rent will be high as well as your retention, because that's what it's all about. Having the rent high and also retaining those people. Because having someone move in and move out every single month is a drag. When you can retain somebody, keep those high standards, you will retain those ideal roommates. I remember having my first ideal roommate. It was like nothing I had ever experienced. It's like, what do you mean? You're going to pay rent on time without me even asking? It's sitting on my desk at home waiting for me? Like it was mind-blowing to me. I figured now that's pretty standard. I was just had my standards so low in the gutter that I did not have the right people moving in. So keep those high standards. That is for sure. All right, then lastly is secret number 5 is have strict house rules. Going back to number 4, keeping the high standards. The stricter you are about the rules, the more people will respect them. If you have loud music playing at midnight, they're not going to respect those rules. If you have rules for others and not rules for yourself, they're not going to respect you at all. And what I've realized is when people are renting a room, a lot of times they're either downsizing from an apartment, kicked out of their girlfriend's house, whatever it may be. They're usually coming from a better situation and downgrading. Or they're upgrading, depending on where you are. I've had people first time out of the house, upgrading to their own place or their own room, and people downgrading. But what you want to do is when people come and rent, especially in a place where there's multiple people, multiple situations, multiple personalities, multiple schedules, all of that going on, the more tight you have the rules, the more tight you run the ship, the more people respect the ship. The more people respect the ship, the more people are willing to stay. And that's the thing here. We're going for retention. The stricter I've had the house rules, the more I've had people stay long-term because they realize that this is a place of peace and quiet. It's not a place of chaos and loud anything. If you walk through my house, no joke. When I had 5 people living in a house, yes, I had a lot of people living in the house. When I had 5 people living in the house, you could walk through the house at 2 p.m. in the middle of the day, and guess what? You might hear very, 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 very low volume television in one room, and the other rooms were completely quiet. Guess what? I've set a standard that you wear headphones, and if you have a phone call that you're going to have somebody, take it elsewhere. The house is small. If we're on a phone, it makes for a very chaotic environment. Have those strict house rules, you will find the right people, and you will retain those people because they realize that this house is a place of peace and not chaos. Thank you guys for watching. I will catch you guys in the next one, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys next time. Bye.